Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for preparing you and your student for college in the fall. We are going to get started in just one moment. And just to give you guys, some information about how the webinar will take place, you guys can ask questions on the question and answer, the Q&A feature in your webinar. And at the end, I will try to go through as many questions as I can, if there are any. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And as people come in, then they can join in. And just to let you know, this webinar will be recorded. It'll be up on my YouTube page. You can search that at Montgomery Admissions Consulting. There you'll find past webinars. I'll be putting future webinars there. And then if you ever want updates, you can subscribe to my newsletter. You can also follow me on social media. You can follow me on Instagram at Montgomery Consulting, or you can follow my Facebook, facebook.com/Montgomery Consulting. Both of those have kind of up to the date, news and breaking information in college admissions. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Great. So I just wanted to take some time to introduce myself. My name is Sydney Montgomery. I graduated from Princeton University with a degree in English and a certificate in French. I then went on to Harvard Law School, where I graduated in 2018 with a focus specifically in child and family issues. I completed my training in independent educational consulting through the University of California, Irvine Division of Continuing Education, and I'm a proud member of the Independent Educational Consultants Association and the Potomac and Chesapeake Association for College Admission Counseling. The Independent Educational Consulting Association is a nationwide network of educational consultants who uphold ethical standards in college admissions or graduate school admissions. We attend conferences, we attend webinars, we talk to admissions officers, we make sure that we are staying up to date consultants. So we do believe in, any kind of academic dishonesty or any kind of foul play. I know that you guys have all seen the news. So the IUCA is kind of a really great gatekeeper for the profession to make sure that we are helping students achieve their college goals in a way that, maximizes happiness for the family and helps them find their best fit school financially, emotionally, socially, and academically. So my motto, I have a couple. I don't make promises about schools, I make promises about students, and I promise to inspire confidence in my students and to push them to their full potential. I believe in the power of helping all students find their purpose and find their drive and find out what makes them happy. So I've been doing admissions consulting since 2012. I have a 9th and 10th grade program called the Early Insights program that is really not geared towards college per se. We're not focusing on the schools itself, but we're focusing on the students and and their strengths and their interests and their passions, because I believe that before you can know what you want in a college, you have to know about yourself, and you have to know how you learn best, and you have to learn what are the places that are going to make you the best version of yourself. So that's what I work with my 9th and 10th grade students. I work with them on career and major exploration, and I work with them on time management, on academic planning, summer programming, but just getting to know them and helping them have that confidence and that voice, so that in 11th and 12th grade, when we work on college admissions, they are more assured of themselves. They are not as anxious about the process. They're able to articulate what would make a great college environment for them, and they're able to really be successful and end up somewhere that makes them happy. I am a virtual consultant, which means that I'm able to see students nationwide. I also am able to see students abroad. I have a few international students, which is really exciting. And as I said earlier, I believe in strong, ethics and, really being an advocate for the student and part of the team for the family. So what are the topics we're going to cover today? Today, we're focused on that transition from high school to college, which of course is going to look a little different this year with the pandemic. There's so many things that are not known right now. There are so many things, that are up in the air. Schools are saying that they're opening, schools are saying that they're online. Many schools are saying that they're not going to make a decision right now, but that they're going to make a decision, closer to June and July. So in the midst of all of this, there's some things that stay the same though. There are some things that you do need to know, whether your student is starting college in the fall in your living room or whether they're actually going to be on campus. So we're going to talk about some of those important documents and legal information. We're going to talk about those forms. As a lawyer, I'm really excited to make sure that all of you are prepared emotionally to send your children off, but that you have the legal and financial and health information that you need to make everything successful and smooth. We're going to talk about before you go checklists. We're going to talk about what you need to help your team succeed. And then, how you help them transition emotionally, especially with everything that's going on. I will say next week at exactly this time, I'm having a webinar dedicated just for seniors, no parents allowed. And that's because I want them to feel comfortable asking the questions, that they may not feel comfortable letting you know that they're thinking about. Maybe they're trying to put on a brave face, but they do have some anxiety. So I wanted a space where I could talk to them in a little bit more target about, what they need to do, the mindset shift that they need to do as they prepare to transition from high school to college. I think that's really important. I think that there's not enough planning and there's not enough conversation in the high schools about what that transition looks like. So exactly this time next week, you can get all of your high school students together and I will be here to answer questions and go through a similar but different and more targeted presentation for them. So to think about the important documents and legal information that you need to know, there's kind of these four large buckets. There's FERPA, and I'll go through what all these mean. There's HIPAA and healthcare proxies. There's durable power of attorney. And then there's the difference between the IEDA and the ADA. I could have called this slide alphabet soup for all of the different abbreviations and acronyms there are. But a lot of these things are things that aren't found on your typical college checklist, but can really make a difference. And especially with the current health crisis that we have, if your team's school is one of those schools that are saying, yes, we're opening, you want to make sure that you have some of these things in place because it could really be crucial to you in this coming season. So the first thing that I want to talk about is FERPA. FERPA stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. So FERPA, up until now, K through 12, has allowed you to access your child's educational records. It was created as a way to shield, student records from the general public, but to give access to parents so that they're always in the know about, how their child is progressing. When a student turns 18, however, or when they go to a school beyond high school, so even if you have 17-year-olds who are starting college in the fall, those rights that previously were yours as parents are transferred to the student. What does that mean exactly? So generally, FERPA covers academic information. It covers GPA, transcripts, academic probation, discipline records. And I know that you're saying, well, I'm paying the tuition. I should know if my child is on academic probation. And unfortunately, that's not an automatic given. So what can you do about that? So your student will hold the right to have their educational information, only go to them. Many schools do have what's called a waiver. And it's a waiver that your student can fill out that basically allows the school to talk to you and disseminate some of that academic information to you. What's important to note is that, well, one, without the waiver, colleges cannot talk to you. they're prohibited from discussing the information about the academic records. So, if you feel like, or your son or daughter has come home maybe from college and they're saying, I'm failing, I don't know. And you're like, well, I'm gonna go and talk to the school and, figure out where your grades are. The school will not be able to talk to you. They will not give you that academic information. Now, if your child does decide to do the waiver, and that's something that you and your child will have to discuss, it doesn't mean that the school has to give you the information. It's not an automatic. You still have to request the information, and the school is just permitted to. But the important thing to note is that every school has different policies about how they want to give that information to families and to parents who are requesting that information. What's the most important thing to know about FERPA? Part of the students going to college is, they're gaining their independence. They're owning their academic journey. I tell my students that all the time when I'm working with them, up until, the point when they're getting ready to go, that this is your college journey. I went to college. It's not my college journey. Your parents, they have jobs. It's not their college journey, but it's your college journey. And it's your academics, and no one can want it more than you. So, while the initial reaction may be absolutely, my child is signing this waiver, I encourage you to make it more of a conversation. Talk to your student about the kind of boundaries and responsibilities they want. I would suggest framing it not in a, well, I'm paying the bill, so you need to sign this waiver so that I can see your grades, but I want to help support you in this transition. Maybe we can talk about what signing this waiver will mean, so that if there was a serious situation, I would be able to help you, or I would just be more informed, even if I'm not getting involved at the school level, which, I would suggest you not do. But, having more information can help make the conversation with your teen, if they do come home, feeling a little discouraged from the first semester, you will have that information and you'll be able to have a fuller conversation with your child. A lot of the things that we're talking about, I'm giving you options for, how you can stay involved and stay knowledgeable throughout your child's, first year and even, their fourth year. But many of this does come down to, what is the relationship that you want to build with your child in terms of boundaries, in terms of, the communication standards that you're setting with your child. So, there is a health and safety exception to FERPA though, and I think that's really important. So if your child is considered a threat to himself or to others, or if there's a need to protect the health and safety of other students, then the school may disclose to the parents, the information that's going on. The school may, because, it covers discipline records. So the school may disclose, any underage drinking, or violation of the use and possession of drugs, or any other things that the school feels really puts the health and safety of students at risk. But again, I encourage you to know the school's policies, because this varies from institution to institution. The next one, and like I said, this is so important given the pandemic and the situation with COVID, is HIPAA, healthcare proxies, and advanced healthcare directives. So HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. When your child turns 18, you no longer have automatic access to their healthcare information, even if you are the one paying the health insurance bill. They are the holder of their health information. So there's a few different things that you and your student can talk about. One of the most powerful things that you and your student can talk about is a healthcare proxy. So a healthcare proxy allows you as a parent, or any other adult that they choose, to make medical decisions for them, in the event that they're unable to make those decisions for themselves. So this means if your child has an accident or an illness, or, God forbid, they're temporarily disabled, you will have the authority to make this kind of healthcare decisions for them. Otherwise, you may need a court approval to kind of act in that capacity. It's important to note that healthcare proxies do, you can only have one healthcare agent, but you can have, several backup agents. So, maybe it's mom who's the healthcare agent, but then, dad is the proxy, or grandma, or that, aunt. You can have a number of backup agents, but only one primary agent. The important thing to note about everything on this slide is that it's very state specific. So, each state is going to have slightly different rules about how these need to be enacted, which forms need to have a notary or a witness, and the best way to go about that. Some healthcare proxies also include a HIPAA waiver, because like I said, it allows you to have the information, which is the HIPAA portion, but then it also allows you to converse with the healthcare providers and to make healthcare decisions, and that's really the proxy point of that. Now, it's important for your student to know that this is not a decision that, is made lightly. Depending on the relationship that you have had in your student's medical health and history, this may be too much power for your student. Your student may feel like maybe they don't want to have a healthcare proxy, but maybe they are okay having just a HIPAA waiver. A HIPAA waiver is more narrow. It allows a specific person to have access to medical records. So you're not able to make those healthcare decisions or converse with the healthcare providers, but you are able to have access, to the information and know kind of what's going on. It's also important to note that a healthcare proxy can be revoked or terminated at any time by the student. So, it's not a binding instrument. I think it's especially important to have them, especially the first or second year, and then to reevaluate it, as you go to see, is this something that we still think is appropriate? Is this something that we feel is meeting our needs? Maybe you start off with a HIPAA waiver and then realize that you want a healthcare proxy instead. Both of these instruments can also include a living will, which is one way for your students to kind of make decisions about, preemptively what they would want to have happen to their health, maybe in absence of a proxy. If a student has pretty strong wishes about how they would want things to happen, and they feel comfortable with that instrument, and then they feel comfortable with the HIPAA waiver, that may be a nice middle ground between a proxy and a HIPAA waiver. One thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is a durable power of attorney. So a durable power of attorney allows you to make financial decisions for your child. And not just in the event something happens for your child, but actually it allows you to make financial decisions for your child as if you were them after they turn 18. So this can be as mundane as making banking decisions, transferring money into or out of their personal bank account, paying for bills, handling their financial obligations. Sometimes at some schools, this may be really helpful in dealing with some financial aid or tuition questions. The portion that's durable is that it stays with the child even if the child becomes incapacitated. And I shouldn't say child, the student, because at that point they're over 18. So without a power of attorney, you would not necessarily be able to manage your student's financial and legal affairs without petitioning the court for guardianship. So that can be really important, depending, especially on the financial situation. It can be on one end if your student has, a lot of personal finances and you want to make sure that, they're handling everything okay, or they're not getting in over head, or if your student has on the other end of the spectrum a lot of debt, and you want to make sure, again, that they're handling everything okay, or that you're able to handle things in the event that something would happen. Normally, these things I recommend, to my parents, no matter the circumstances, but I think especially given the situation that we're in, if your student were to go to campus and, contract COVID or have, some sort of situation where they need to go to the hospital, having that healthcare proxy, having the HIPAA waiver, having the durable power of attorney, those things just become so important. And especially if your child is going out of state, you can certainly get them for the state that you're in, but it's also something to think about in terms, especially the healthcare proxies, to think about making sure that they're valid in the state that they are going to. Most of them are, but you can take out, one for each state, which I think is important. And you want to make sure that your student really understands what these legal documents are, and really understands the scope of them. Just like the healthcare proxies and the HIPAA waivers, the durable power of attorney can be revoked at any time. So, if your student graduates from college and they're like, okay, I'm pretty comfortable making my own financial decisions now, they can revoke it or amend it, limit the scope perhaps. There's a lot of different things that you can do with these documents. They have a lot of power, but they can provide a lot of peace of mind, especially with so much uncertainty going on. And kind of on that last alphabet soup, I want to talk to you a little bit about disability accommodations and the difference that you need to know between the IEDA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Act, which has, if your son or daughter has had any kind of learning disabilities, physical disabilities, mental health accommodations, health accommodations, the IEDA has really been the thing that has been guiding your student, versus the ADA, which is the American with Disabilities Act, which is what covers them in college. So the IEDA means that students have a guaranteed right to free, appropriate public education, FAPE. What that means is that the district is responsible for identifying students with disabilities, evaluating them, and covering costs. Usually, if your student is dealing with accommodations in K through 12, they have what's called either an individualized education plan, an IEP, or a 504 plan. And it's developed and managed by a team of people, which is an important distinction. If your son or daughter needs a wheelchair or hearing aid or any other personal devices and services, those are usually provided and covered by the school district if they're necessary. Now, of course, not all districts follow the IEDA as well as others, but there is an appeals process through the IEDA because these things are covered by law, and they're guaranteed for your child to make sure that they have, a free, appropriate public education. It's appropriate to your child and their situation and their circumstances. That is different, however, from what is covered under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the Americans with Disabilities Act is not specific to education. It basically prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. And the ADA comes into place in a lot of different places. It comes into place for housing, in the workplace, you may see it, and then yes, education. So it's a very broad law. As opposed to the IEDA, students must self-identify. The college has no responsibility to identify students with disabilities. They must self-report and contact the disability office or disability student services themselves and request accommodations. So if your student perhaps has had an IEP or a 504 and they believe that they don't need those accommodations anymore, the college is not going to say, oh, hey, we know that you've had these accommodations, like let's try to match them. They're not going to do that. And if your student decides that they don't want to seek the accommodations and they don't want to self-report to the disability office, that is in their right, because the colleges are not going to make them. So another important difference is that some accommodations may not be covered financially. They just really have a duty not to discriminate on the basis of disability. It is a much lower standard. So you'll see a lot of, for example, in autism support programs, a lot of those programs do have an additional cost. If you want all of the services, perhaps that the school could offer that maybe mirror what your 504 IEP looked like. Of course, they're required to provide reasonable accommodations, but your IEP or 504 plan may have had accommodations that go beyond that, that the school can provide and may provide, but it may not necessarily be completely covered in tuition. And those may be things like if you're used to having a one-on-one That's a really big thing that is often not covered in colleges. Some schools do have more support for students with learning differences and accommodation needs than others, but you just have to see what is within the school's tuition and maybe what is an extra cost. And that cost may be per semester, it might be per year. You may qualify for financial aid for that cost. There may be grants for it. Every school does it differently. So when your student goes to the disability office, you know, that office may require documentation of that disability, which may be a copy of their IEP or 504 plan. It might be letters from their doctor, especially, you know, if it's like ADHD, maybe they didn't have a 504 IEP, or, you know, maybe it's just something that they've been managing with medication, but now they're saying, okay, I really think I do need some extra accommodations for college. Then, you know, your doctor may get involved. Once the Office of Disability or the Student Services decides or, you know, grants that accommodation request, and they might give your student an accommodation plan, or they might give them an accommodation letter, it is up to your student to then inform their professors, each professor, of the accommodations, whether that is in classroom accommodations or testing accommodations. Again, the disability services is not necessarily, some do have really great coordination of services, but they're not required to go and tell all of your professors about the accommodation plan. It's not a team approach like it is K through 12 with the 504 plans and the IEPs. It's a little bit more individual. So you want to prepare your student to have those conversations. Make sure that your student knows how to be a self-advocate. Make sure that your student knows how to articulate what it is that they need, where and how they thrive educationally, and what things hinder them and cause roadblocks. You know, also, colleges are not required to provide personal devices or services. So if you are a parent of a student with accommodations with disabilities, I highly recommend that you really take a look at that 504 or IEP and see, okay, what are the services that my son or daughter is getting right now? Make a list of all of them. Even if you think, oh, you know, this is so obvious and mundane, make a list of all of them, and then say, what is covered under tuition? What can I get from the school? Have that conversation with the Office of Disability as soon as possible. You know, sometimes I even have students contacting those offices when they're applying to school, so that they know when they're making their decisions which schools are going to be easier to navigate with their accommodations. So then once you have that back and forth with that office, then you can see what can they provide and what things maybe do I need to provide as a parent, whether that's we need to hire a tutor, or whether that's we need to hire a one-on-one, or whether that's, you know, we need to purchase some personal equipment or devices, so that you are able to make sure that your student has all the support that they need, and then they can make that transition. And then you may want to have check-ins with your student to make sure that they feel comfortable advocating for themselves in situations with professors, or maybe if they're feeling like their accommodations are not being met. So I am featuring 2 different books in this webinar. I'm pretty excited about it. The first one is right here. It's called How to College, What to Know Before You Go and When You're There. This book I'm going to go into a lot more detail next week when we are talking with our high school seniors, but there's a really great summer checklist in it. You know, so things that you want to make sure that final high school transcripts are sent to the schools, which of course may be difficult depending on the school that your child's attending right now, whether they have access to those transcripts. Sometimes I know counselors are going in and fulfilling those requests. Sometimes I know principals are going in and doing them. So no matter where you are, you want to make sure that those transcripts are sent. Roommate questionnaires and other housing documents. For some schools, this was due this month in May. For some schools, this is due in June. Of course, housing may or may not look the same way, but you do want to make sure that you do have those questionnaires and documents filled out just in case, because maybe if they're online in the fall, they won't be in the spring, and you never know, you know, when those deadlines are still going to be applied. Likewise, housing and meal plan accommodations, understand the pricing policy for this year. Ask those questions to the school. Okay, if I pay this now and you decide in August or September that you're sending my child home, am I gonna get a refund? What am I gonna get a refund on? What's the pro rate gonna be? You know what you're getting into. Make plans as if things are going to, if your school has said we're opening, make plans as if they're opening, but then prepare yourself financially to know, what is the plan B if they have to reverse course. And then immunization and health forms, you want to kind of arrange necessary pre-college doctor's appointments. Some other forms that may be really important for you to have or your student to have, your student should have a list of their prescriptions. They should have a list of their doctors, their at-home doctors and their phone numbers, a list of their allergies. You want to make sure, you think, oh, well, my son or daughter has been dealing with this medical thing their whole life. Of course they know. You would be surprised how many teens sort of forget because they're used to their health being managed by their parent, and now they're going to be managing it. They're going to be making their own appointments, and they're going to, be asked, oh, okay, what are your medical conditions? And you want to make sure that they are pretty familiar with that list. And then, of course, you want to try to make sure that you finish everything that you need for college healthcare enrollment or submit proof of insurance for your own health insurance if you're choosing to use that. And I think especially in this time, you want to make sure that you're checking your health insurance out-of-network benefits because you never know necessarily where your child may need to be seen at. And so you want to know what are the limits and the outer scopes of your policy. Another book that I'm going to feature, I'm going to flash the picture at the end of the webinar, is The Naked Roommate for Parents Only. The Naked Roommate has a really acclaimed college edition that I used when I went to college. It is truly one of the greatest guides for students on 107 different things they may encounter in their first year. And so The Naked Roommate came out with a second book for parents only that really dives deep into making that transition through not just getting them to school, but it actually walks them through the entire first year. And it walks you through as the parent how to navigate different things that you may experience the entire first year. So, some other things that you may want to do this summer is to review the catalog and student handbook to increase your knowledge of the policies and regulations. So, that handbook should probably include things like how they handle requests for, FERPA requests, how they handle medical issues, how they handle disciplinary issues. I think those are all super important things that can vary institution to institution. And so you want to make sure that you're knowing the policies and that your son or daughter knows the policies for, okay, what happens if I'm drinking underage? What's the disciplinary? Is it a zero tolerance school? Is there a student ethics board? Or a disciplinary board? Who are the people that I need to know, especially parents? Who are the people that you need to know in case there's an emergency and you need to get in contact with your student right away? Is it a dean of students? Is it a residence hall dean? Know kind of those important key players so that if anything comes up, you're able to navigate that. You also want to check to make sure that the financial aid office has received all your required documents, and pay tuition and fees and discuss personal finances with your student. And that sort of brings me to this kind of prepare for launch area. There's so many things that I think sometimes it's easy to take it for granted that your student may know because they've watched you do it or they've had chores at home. But, without that kind of oversight, sometimes teens are a little nervous about some of the basic tasks. So I would suggest, you can do this throughout the summer, kind of making it fun. Next time you're doing laundry, next time you're cleaning. I know cleaning doesn't sound fun, but just trying to say, okay, let's talk about how you separate your whites from your colors, or your light colors from your dark colors, or do you know the difference between fabric softeners or, you know, bleach and when to use bleach, how to use a stain remover, how to iron. One of my freshman year roommates did not know how to iron, and it was a really interesting time. And it just, you know, it really always makes me think when I think of that story of all the little things that actually make such a big difference. So these can be even basic apartment things, like do they know how to plunge a toilet? I certainly did not know how to plunge a toilet when I went to college, nor did I think on my college prep checklist, oh, let me learn how to use a plunger. I learned, but that can be, you know, that can be something that you can talk to your teen, how to, what to do if there's cockroaches. I know that doesn't sound really exciting, but you know, how to clean the bathroom, if they're gonna have their own bathroom in a suite style room. You know, little things like that. You know, do they know how to unclog a drain? Do they know how to change a vacuum bag? Do they know how to vacuum? Those are things that you may not necessarily think of, but your teen will be learning on those first few years on their own at college. Again, you know, with laundry, you want to make sure that they know which clothes should not maybe be put in the dryer so that they don't shrink. You know, do they know how to, you know, do they know how to, you know, wash their delicates? Like there's a few different things that you just want to make sure that you're passing along. Schedule management is a huge one, especially if you have been managing your teen's schedule from, you know, maybe they've always been in a million activities and you're like the taskmaster in the house and you've got everyone on a schedule. And now all of a sudden your teen is managing their own schedule. So what do you do with that? How do you make sure that your teen is able to effectively manage their schedule? I suggest, you know, sitting down with them and talking through several different things. Do you like a paper planner, which sounds super old school, but it's actually very helpful? Do you like Google Calendar? Do you use an iCal on your phone? Do you know how to make appointment reminders? Do you know, how long it maybe takes to do certain things? You know, if they're gonna say, okay, laundry, 30 minutes in their schedule, well, that might not go over so well when laundry does take a lot longer than that. This can be really difficult, but it's important because they need to know how to arrive on time. They need to know how to plan for study time and meetings. They also need to know how to make sure that they're having time for fun and they're not feeling so overscheduled that they're just getting overwhelmed with college. And some students really do struggle with this, and some students struggle with this perhaps because they've got executive functioning issues or, task management is just really difficult for them. And so that's a situation in which you can look into. There's several different executive functioning coaches and executive functioning tutors. There's a really great executive functioning workbook online that really helps your teen work through how to manage their life in a way that fosters independence. Same thing with appointment managing. If you are the one that's always been making their doctor's appointments or their dental appointments, practice having your teen call the doctor's office and make an appointment. It seems really basic, but that way they kind of get used to, speaking to someone about their own health. Budgeting is really important. You want to learn how to manage a budget. Or teach your child how to manage a budget. One of the really great apps that's actually free the first year with a .edu account is You Need a Budget. YNAB, it's a really great, fun budgeting to zero budget tool that helps your student really see money. There's, there's Mint, there's Clarity, there's a few different ones, so they can kind of have some fun with some budgeting apps. But, they need to know how to, if they're spending, even if they're spending dining dollars, and so they're not spending real cash, say, okay, I have this many dining dollars, then maybe I can't get 7 pizzas tonight for dinner and, 8 chicken, next week because I'm going to run out of dining dollars. So little things like that. Know what bills they're responsible for, when they come out, if any of them are auto-drafted, how to pay for them, how much they're spending on fun and entertainment. how much maybe they're spending for groceries, if your teen may be cooking for themselves. And then of course, what do they do if they find that their income is less than the amount that they're spending? So talking to them about personal finances, whether or not, you feel comfortable with them taking out a credit card, what the expectations are for some of their other bills, like their car, if they have one, or cell phone, that sort of thing. And then I just think that everyone should know how to prepare and cook some simple meals, even though most of them will be on a meal plan. It's good to know how to make spaghetti, how to boil some eggs, how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, how to make salads, and also though about making healthy food options. You may have been the one to say, well, eat your vegetables, but they can eat whatever they want in college. But so talking to your teen about making healthy choices, fruits and vegetables, will really go a long way in their own personal happiness and nutrition. So one of the last things I want to talk to you about is how to help your teen emotionally prepare for freshman year, whether that's in person or online. So, make a plan as a family for communicating during the school year. Who's going to call? Are you both going to call? Do you have expectations for how often you're going to talk? You don't want to think, oh, my teen's going to talk to me every day, and then they're thinking, oh, I'll talk to mom once a week or once a month, because that'll lead to some hurt feelings and some discord. So make a plan. Okay, are we going to talk twice a week? Is it going to be the same time, or is it going to be a different time? I recommend it actually not be the same time, because schedules kind of get busy, and as your teen is learning to manage their schedule, it could take them a few weeks or even months to figure out when their busy times are and when their not busy times are. And their free time might be 11 p.m. at night, and that might be your sleeping time. So maybe making a plan about what are some good times to call. And then also, will it be a call? Maybe you email, maybe you text, maybe you do Zoom calls. Kind of figuring out what the expectations are, so that no one is frustrated or annoyed or upset or afraid to tell you, that they actually don't want to talk as much as maybe you want to talk. But I think there are some important conversations that you do need to make sure that you are, setting aside some time. So for example, if it's taxes, you want to say, okay, well, let's say you need to talk to your son or daughter about taxes in a month. Don't wait until that week and say, okay, I really need you to make time in your week. Say, okay, 2 months from now, we really need to sit down and have, 2 hours conversation about some finances and some taxes. When is a good time for you? And, have your student commit to a time that they have buy-in, and then that's where you can have those important family conversations. Or maybe, maybe it's about college expenses and it's not about taxes. So maybe it's can we spend half an hour on a Saturday? You pick from the next 3 Saturdays when we can talk about this. That gives your teen the feeling like they have choice, but it also makes sure that you have enough time for those important conversations. And then there's some really, the Naked Roommate has some really great questions for summer prep that I like to adapt for this unconventional fall. And it's questions about, normally it asks you to ask your teen, what is your perfect or ideal first year college look like? And how can I help you get there? And it's a series of questions, that does some expectation managing with your teen, because sometimes they go in thinking college is going to be this, and then the reality is different. And then that's when they kind of get, upset or frustrated. And so maybe that conversation is, okay, what would be an ideal online learning environment for you for college? I know that online learning is not what they want. But maybe, a lot of schools are trying to do a lot to have some of those clubs and extracurricular activities be virtual. Maybe they're saying, okay, well, I still want to feel like I'm in college. So, this time from, this time to this time is my college time. And that's when your teen can really, feel free to try to be independent and set their own schedule and, and do their classes so they don't feel like it's just an extenuation of high school. Because even if they're at home and they're in your living room, it is still a transitional time for them. And you don't want to just delay the transition. You want to say, okay, how can I help you transition at home to college, and have a conversation about what that looks like, and some, backup plans so that you and your teen have some good expectations. And then also set some expectations for what it would be like if they go away. So have like kind of a plan A and a plan B. You want to discuss various social issues they might come in contact with, talk to them about their fears, their concerns, their expectations, talk to them about where they can get support. So make sure that they know who their academic advisor is going to be, make sure that they know where the counseling and mental health resources are, because they may need that. If they have residence advisors, or if they have academic deans or residence deans, know who all the players are, but make sure your student knows who they can go to and ask for help. So I've mentioned them a few times. These are the two books: How to College by Andrea, Brenner, and Lara Schwartz, and The Naked Roommate by Harlan Cohen. I'm really excited to say that if you want a copy of How to College, which I think is an absolutely fantastic resource for your teens, for you, for family members, I'm able to get you a copy for $12. That includes shipping, and it can be sent anywhere that you live, and you can have this copy for yourself. I think it's really great to teach kids how to take responsibility for their mindset, how to transition from being just a high school student to really the author and director of their academic journey. And then The Naked Roommate, it's available on Amazon. It's available in Kindle version or paperback, and it's just about this high, and it's such a great resources for your expectations for this new college journey. Of course, if you have any questions about this or about college admissions in general, like I said, I work with 9th through 12th graders. I also work with prospective law school students and transfer students. Feel free to reach out to me. You can follow me on Instagram at S Montgomery Consulting, or at Facebook /S Montgomery Consulting. This webinar will be put on YouTube, and I'll be sending it out to all of the registrants. I'm looking here to see if we have any questions. I think perhaps I was very thorough, so there are no questions. But if any questions do come up after the webinar, like I said, you can reach out to me at info@smontgomeryconsulting.com. Feel free to share this webinar with your friends and your family, and if they have any questions, then they can absolutely reach out to me as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to thank you all for joining me. Like I said, next week at exactly the same time, I will be talking directly to students, directly to high school seniors. And if you missed my Facebook Live that happened at the beginning of the month on, the coronavirus, college admissions, and navigating the college admissions process in the midst of the pandemic, that is on YouTube now. And I just answered a bunch of Q&A that people had about, the different impacts of the coronavirus, the pass-fail grades, the summer programs, financial aid, application cycles, all of those questions. That's right there on my YouTube. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.